always thought houses were just wood and walls, until mine started reacting to me. Not noises from the pipes, not settling sounds. Something inside the house was responding to where I stood, to when I moved, to when I was awake. And the moment I realized it wasn't following me, it was waiting for me. I moved into the house a little over a year ago. It wasn't anything special. A small, older place on the edge of a quiet neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, 1 floor, no basement. Just a narrow attic crawl space and a single hallway that connected everything. The price was good. Too good, honestly. But I didn't ask many questions. At first, everything felt normal. The house was quiet, almost too quiet. No street noise, no neighbors throwing parties. Just the occasional creak at night, which I chalked up to an old building adjusting to temperature changes. That's what everyone says, right? The first thing that felt off happened about a week after I moved in. I was brushing my teeth late at night, standing in the bathroom, when I heard a sound from the hallway. It wasn't loud. It sounded like bare feet, softly stepping on hardwood. 1 step, then another. I froze, toothbrush still in my mouth, listening. The sound stopped. I waited a full minute before peeking into the hallway. Nothing was there. I told myself I imagined it. Stress, new place, new noises. But after that, it started happening more often. Always at night, always subtle. Sometimes it sounded like slow movement behind the walls. Other times, like someone shifting their weight just outside a room I was in. Never rushing, never clumsy. Whatever it was, it moved carefully. The thing that really messed with me was the timing. The sounds only happened when I was fully awake. If I fell asleep early, nothing happened. If I stayed up late, the house would come alive, almost like it knew. One night, I decided to test it. I turned off all the lights and sat completely still on the couch, phone screen dark, not making a sound. For nearly 10 minutes, nothing happened. Then I shifted my leg. Immediately from the hallway, I heard a soft creak. Not random, directional, like something had adjusted its position. I stood up. The sound stopped. I took 1 slow step toward the hallway. A faint scrape answered back. That was the first time I felt real fear. Not panic, recognition. Something was aware of me. After that, I stopped sleeping well. I started leaving lights on, playing TV noise at night, anything to avoid silence. But the house didn't care. One night around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of breathing. Not mine. It was shallow, controlled, coming from somewhere close. I held my breath and listened. The breathing stopped instantly. Like whatever was doing it realized I was awake. I stayed completely still for what felt like hours. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me back under. The next morning, I found something that made my stomach drop. In the hallway, directly outside my bedroom door, there were faint marks on the floor. Not scratches, not footprints, just long, thin scuffs, like something had been standing there for a long time and slowly shifting its weight. Facing my door, I tried telling friends about it. They joked about ghosts, old houses, overactive imagination. I wanted to believe them, until the night I heard it whisper. It wasn't words. It sounded like air being pushed through a mouth that wasn't shaped quite right. Right outside my bedroom wall. Slow, testing. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, heart pounding, and opened the door. The hallway was empty, but the air felt wrong, heavy, pressurized, like stepping into a room where someone had just been standing inches from you. That night, I slept in my car. The next day, I checked the attic. There was nothing up there, no animals, no signs of entry, just insulation and darkness. But as I climbed down the ladder, I noticed something. The attic hatch was warm. Warm like someone had been up there recently. I moved out 2 weeks later. I didn't tell the landlord the real reason. I didn't want him to think I was crazy. But here's the part I can't explain. The night before I left, everything stopped. No sounds, no movement, no pressure in the air. The house felt Empty, like whatever lived there had already left. Or worse, like it knew I was finally leaving and didn't need to hide anymore. Next story. I was driving home alone on a fog-covered back road after a late shift when I noticed a small yellow light hovering just off the side of the road. At first, I thought it was a reflector, but no matter how fast or slow I drove, the light stayed perfectly beside me, matching my speed. When I stopped my car, it stopped too. Then my engine died. My phone went black, and the light suddenly began to grow brighter, like it was getting closer. I've never been able to explain what happened next. I work late nights at a small dive bar about 30 minutes from my house. It's not exactly a dream job, but when you live in a rural area, you take what you can get. Most nights are quiet, predictable, and uneventful. That night was no different. After closing up, I got in my car and started the long drive home. The route is nothing but winding back roads. Barely any traffic, barely any streetlights, just endless curves cutting through woods and farmland. I've driven it more times than I can count, and I usually enjoy how peaceful it feels. But that night, something felt off. The fog was thicker than I'd ever seen it. Visibility dropped so badly that even my high beams barely helped. Instead of lighting the road, they just reflected back into my eyes, turning the fog into a glowing white wall. I had to slow way down just to stay safe. About halfway home, I noticed something strange. Through the fog, slightly off to the right side of the road, there was a faint yellow blinking light. At first, I assumed it was a roadside reflector or some kind of marker. But as I kept driving, I realized something wasn't right. The light didn't get closer. It didn't fall behind me. It stayed in the exact same position, blinking steadily, keeping pace with my car as if it were moving alongside me inside the fog. I couldn't tell how far away it actually was. The fog distorted everything, messing with my depth perception. After about a minute of watching this thing hover in the same spot, I felt a knot form in my stomach. I slowed down, expecting the light to either pass me or drift away. It didn't. It stayed perfectly aligned with my car, matching my speed like it was locked onto me. That's when the fear really set in. I slowed to almost a crawl. Still nothing changed. Finally, I came to a complete stop in the middle of the road. The light stopped too. It continued blinking at the same rhythm, suspended in the fog like it was waiting. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Part of me wanted to turn around and get out of there immediately. Before I could decide, the light changed. It didn't blink faster. It started growing brighter. Each pulse burned stronger, like a flame catching oxygen and flaring up. The glow intensified with every second, pushing through the fog and filling my windshield with yellow light. That was enough. I reached down to shift into reverse so I could turn around, and realized the engine was completely silent. The car was off. I hadn't touched the key. My hands started shaking, and that never happens to me. I tried turning the ignition. Nothing. The engine was dead. No clicking, no response. At the same time, the yellow light continued growing brighter, almost like it was feeding on something. I grabbed my phone, hoping to call for help or at least record what was happening. The screen was black, dead. I knew it had battery. I'd checked it less than an hour earlier. My pulse was racing. I was completely alone on a fog-covered back road with no power, no engine, and this glowing light getting stronger by the second. Then suddenly, the light exploded into blinding brightness. It was so intense I physically couldn't keep my eyes open. I threw my arms over my face and squeezed my eyes shut, feeling the glow burning through my eyelids. I stayed like that for several seconds, frozen in pure panic. And then, nothing. The brightness vanished. I slowly opened my eyes. The fog was still there, thick and silent, but the light was completely gone, like it had never existed. Heart pounding, I reached for the ignition one more time, The engine started instantly. I didn't hesitate. I drove the rest of the way home without taking my eyes off the road for even a second. I half expected that light to reappear at any moment, but it never did. Nothing like that has ever happened to me again. I've told friends, family, even co-workers, and no one has ever given me an explanation that feels right. And honestly, I'm not sure I even want one. Next story. I thought the SUV behind me was just another late-night driver on an empty desert highway, until it followed me for nearly 40 miles, matched every speed change, and pulled into the same isolated rest stop at 2 in the morning. I thought it finally left. I was wrong, because an hour later, I woke up to footsteps outside my truck and 2 men trying to break into my trailer. This happened a couple years ago. I'm a long-haul truck driver, and I've been doing this line of work for years. Long, empty highways, overnight runs, and stretches of nothing but darkness don't bother me anymore. You get used to it. That night, I was finishing the second-to-last delivery on a cross-state route, just trying to get it done so I could finally head home. My route cut through a massive stretch of desert highway. No towns, no gas stations, barely any lights. Just a 2-lane road slicing through open desert under a sky packed with stars. It's the kind of road that makes you feel like you're the only human left alive. About an hour before my next drop-off, I noticed something in my side mirror. A dark SUV was behind me. At first, nothing seemed strange. It wasn't tailgating me or flashing its lights. It kept a steady distance, far enough not to feel aggressive, but close enough to always stay visible. But after a while, I realized something wasn't right. No matter how fast I went, no matter how slow I drove, the SUV adjusted perfectly to match me. Mile after mile, it stayed exactly where it was. For nearly 40 miles, it never passed me, never fell back, never disappeared, just followed. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the driver was nervous about passing a big rig at night, but we passed several clear passing zones, and they still didn't move. Eventually, I stopped trying to explain it. I just focused on the road, but I couldn't stop checking the mirror. Something about that car felt wrong. Around 2 a.m., I decided to pull into a small roadside rest area. Not a real truck stop, just a dusty dirt lot with a few faded parking spaces and a tiny shed with vending machines. The only light was a single dim bulb flickering above the machines. I figured I'd stretch my legs and finally let whoever was behind me pass. But when I slowed down and pulled in, the SUV followed me in. It parked far away in the darkest corner of the lot. That's when irritation turned into anger. I climbed down from the cab and started walking toward the SUV, ready to confront whoever had been creeping behind me for hours. But before I could get halfway there, the SUV suddenly roared to life. It took off like it had just been spooked. Tires kicking up dust and gravel, engine screaming as it blasted back onto the highway. I tried to catch a look at the driver, but the windows were too dark. Within seconds, the taillights vanished into the desert. Part of me felt relieved. Another part felt deeply unsettled. Whoever that was clearly didn't want to be confronted. I went back to my truck, tired and drained from the adrenaline. The vending machines were empty anyway, a complete waste of time. I decided to take a short nap before finishing the drive. I did a quick safety check around the trailer, made sure everything was locked, climbed back into the cab, cracked the window for air, and leaned back. The desert was silent. I fell asleep almost instantly. I should mention, I'm an extremely light sleeper. You have to be in this job. When your truck is your livelihood, any strange sound can mean trouble. About an hour later, I woke up. Not fully, just enough to register a sound. A faint crunch, like boots stepping on loose gravel. I stayed perfectly still and slowly cracked open the corner of my window blind. 2 figures were crouched near the rear wheels of my trailer. They were inspecting the locks. One of them had a small flashlight. The other pulled something from a bag. Bolt cutters. My heart slammed into my chest. Without thinking, I slammed my hand down on the air horn. The blast shattered the silence like an explosion. Both men jumped and bolted into the brush beside the road. And then, headlights appeared out of nowhere. The same SUV came screaming back into view with its lights still off, picked them up, and vanished back into the darkness in seconds. The entire thing was over almost instantly. I called the police and waited. When officers arrived, they found fresh pry marks on the trailer locks, exactly where the men had been working. They told me it was a cargo theft crew. The SUV had likely been tailing me for miles, waiting for the perfect place to strike. That was the most unsettling night of my entire career, because if I hadn't stopped when I did, or if I'd slept just a little deeper, they might have gotten inside my trailer, or worse, and I never would have known until it was too late. Next story. I thought I was just out for a quiet night drive. Empty roads, warm air through the windows, no traffic, no stress. Then I almost hit a shopping cart in the middle of a dark back road. When I stepped out to move it, two figures came running out of the field straight at me. One of them slammed into my car at full speed, covered in blood, and tried to open my door. Whatever they were planning that night, I was never supposed to walk away. There's nothing better than a late-night drive in the summer. Warm air rushing through open windows. Empty highways stretching into darkness. No traffic, no noise. Just the engine, the road, and your thoughts. Around where I live, the highways are practically empty at night. Oh, no police, no crowds. It feels like you have the entire world to yourself. That night, I was driving my dad's BMW M3, not recklessly, but enjoying the way the car handled. The sound of the engine, the grip of the tires, the freedom of open road. It was one of the few times I actually felt relaxed. At some point, I got this sudden urge to leave the highway and take some back roads. I don't know why. It was just one of those impulses you can't ignore. So I took the next exit and started weaving through narrow, winding roads. Tight curves, no streetlights, no houses, just darkness and farmland. I was completely alone, until something flickered in my headlights. I slammed the brakes and stopped just in time. A shopping cart sat directly in the middle of the road. Not tipped over, not pushed to the side. Perfectly placed, like someone wanted a car to stop there. My heart was already pounding, but curiosity got the better of me. I turned on my hazards, stepped out of the car, and walked toward it. The night was warm and quiet. Bugs buzzing, my engine ticking as it cooled. The cart was empty. No bags, no trash, nothing. I turned back toward my car. That's when movement exploded from the fields beside the road. Two dark figures sprinted toward me at full speed. My brain barely had time to register what was happening. Instinct took over. I ran. I dove into the driver's seat and hit the start button. The engine roared to life just as one of them slammed directly into my passenger door with a sickening thud. He didn't even brace himself. We locked eyes through the glass. His eyes were bloodshot and wild. His clothes were torn and soaked. His face was smeared with something dark. Dirt, blood, maybe both. Blood was actively dripping from his body, yet he looked like he didn't even feel it. There was no anger in his expression, just something empty, wrong. He grabbed the door handle and started yanking on it. That snapped me out of the freeze. I swerved around the shopping cart and floored it, leaving both figures behind in my mirrors. My hands were shaking the entire drive home. Part of me felt sick knowing that guy was bleeding badly. Another part of me knew I'd barely escaped something much worse. I called the police and reported what happened while driving. When I finally got home, I stepped out to check the damage. The passenger door was covered in blood. Streaks across the mirror, smears on the handle, splatter along the side panel, a small dent in the metal. There was far more blood than made sense for a single impact. The next morning, my dad nearly lost his mind when he saw the car. Eventually, he believed me. But that was one of the last times I was ever allowed to take that car out at night. I still don't know exactly who those people were. Maybe they were trying to lure someone out of their car using the shopping cart. Maybe I just happened to interrupt something worse. But every time I think about how close they got, I realize how easily that night could have ended very differently.